Hi girls! So I have the first step of our next project coming at you today. I'm going to show you how to make this sort of neck collar that you just button around your neck, but it helps keep you cool on really hot days. And so we're going to start with the first part of that. What you need is some water beads. You might know them as Orbeez, or things like that. And you can find them in the toy section, or you can find them in the floral section to use to keep your plants hydrated. Or you can buy them on Amazon like this in different, like there's different brands and different things and different colors. Um, so you can buy them like this and then hydrate them yourself. So they're just little, teeny tiny little water beads that expand when you put them in water, and they're like they make a gel ball. So you want the standard size of them. You don't want the really giant ones. You want like the little regular ones that are going to be about marble sized. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by hydrating these. So I'm going to take a couple spoonfuls. So you can see it covers the bottom of my old glass jar here. And they say that you want to put 10 to 15 times the amount of water in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill this mostly full. And now all I do is I wait. So these are going to soak up the water and expand. And then we're going to have sort of marble-sized balls that we're going to use inside of our cooling collar. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to use those water beads that we grew. So I've got some of mine. I just poured them out into my strainer here so that they can be out of the water. I've got a strip of fabric from a jelly roll of fabric. So you can buy them like this and you can get like 20 different pieces of fabric pre-cut for you. And those are 2.5 inches wide by 42 inches long. And so I'm going to take my strip of fabric and I'm actually going to fold it in half inside out. And you can pin it, or if it's pretty much staying in place, you can just kind of hold it in place too. So I've got that inside out. I also have a seam ripper, a button, and a needle and thread, and some paper that I'm going to use as a funnel. So I'm going to use my sewing machine. If you don't have a sewing machine, this is totally doable by hand. It will just take a little bit longer to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew these edges, leaving this side open. So it's going to be one long tube, and I am going to sew this folded edge just because. So I'm going to fold down that folded edge and back up, and then we're going to take and flip this right side out. So it's just like if you're flipping like a long sock around. So once you've got it all the way through, you'll see my corners are kind of stuck in. That's where the pencil comes in handy again. So I'm going to just squish it all up till my pencil gets down to that end, and I can use the point of my pencil to poke my corners out. Okay, so now I've got this long tube of fabric that's sewn together. What I'm going to do is about 2 inches from the end, I'm just going to sew straight across, and that's going to give me a flat piece. And we're going to put a buttonhole there, actually. You can either just cut that, or I'll show you how to do it with the sewing machine. So what that does is whenever we fill it, this section's going to stay flat and it's not going to get the filling. Now, to do a buttonhole, let's bring you over to the machine. Okay, so this here shows you how to do a buttonhole, and it's marked letters A, B, C, D. Those are the orders you're going to follow it in. So A is going to do across the bottom. So I'm going to switch that to 1A on my machine. Okay. I'm just going to put it closer to the bottom here. Okay, so you want to make sure your needle's up. So I let it go about 10 stitches. That is plenty secure for what we're doing. Now I'm going to switch it to B. And that sews along one side of the button. Back to C, which is the same as A. And that does across the top. And then over to D. When you look at it, you can see you've got a spot with that's sewn on all 4 sides. And this is where I'm going to use the seam ripper. I'm going to very carefully poke it through and then use that to cut my fabric, making sure that I stay within that area that I just sewed. But what that does is that reinforces those edges so that when you do put a button on, it's nice and strong. So now we're going to fill it. So I've got just a nice piece of paper here. I made a little funnel out of it. I'm going to stick that in the end of my tube. Maybe. You might need a second pair of hands for this. Okay, so that's in the end of my tube. And I'm just going to take those Orbeez that I hydrated and pour them in. Oops. And they do bounce. But what we're trying to do is we want this to be about half full. So right now I'm here, I'm going to keep pouring them in. I'm just going to check. All right, so that's a little more than half. That's perfect. Take that out, set those aside. And now what we want to do is we want to close this up. So I'm going to take my end. I'm going to tuck those sides in there until they're nice and even. And so it goes flat. And then I'm going to sew that shut. And I'm going to sew another strip here so that it's got another flat piece. That's where we're going to attach the button. So I've got my flat part for my button, and I've got my button. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by putting my needle through, and then I'm going to put my button on that. And then I pull it nice and tight. Oops. If you pull too hard, it might go all the way through. That's okay. So try that again. Okay, so there we are. I'm going to go through my button again. And I'm going to do this a few times to make sure it's nice and secure. So I'm coming up through one of the button holes and down through the other. Okay, so that is 4 times. And if you want to make it really secure, what you do is you go out but not back through your fabric. Like that. And then you sort of wrap the thread around a few times, and that helps secure those together. And then you come back up through and back down. And then you just tie it off on the back. And cut that. And you can move these around. So you have this squishy collar now that you can wear on nice hot days. And because those are water beads, they've soaked up water and it'll cool your neck off. And if it starts to get, if they start to dry out, just soak the whole thing in water again. You can also put it in the freezer and it makes it especially nice and cooled. So really help you cool off on those hot days, especially if you're doing some outside activities.